Have you ever thought about to whom these words were spoken? Honor your father and your mother, Deuteronomy 5 and Exodus 20. These were spoken by God to the adult Israelites to whom he gave his law. We do not outgrow our responsibilities to our own parents and grandparents as long as they live. God may be telling us that age does not void the relationships of family. In fact, age deepens the significance of these family relationships and enables us to profit from the experiences of those who have lived longer.
Hmm.
Don't know who wrote that. It's on a little card from that box. I think I told you a while back that my mom had quotes that she'd collected. And
Hmm.
I thought, I've never really thought about that before.
Yeah, me
Honor
neither.
your
That's
father and your
interesting.
mother to
Hmm.
adults. Yeah. So it's
Good.
timely for me. But anyway, this is Looking Up. We're a podcast for Christian women. If that's not obvious yet, I hope everybody knows that's what we do. My name is Carla Moore. I'm with my friend Kathy Pollard. We are headphoneless and microphoneless today. We're experimenting with the sound and being able to see if this makes a difference because both of us don't like wearing headphones, but we'll see if it works. We're glad that you've joined us, and we're going to talk about something that I find very interesting. And before we do, we'll check up with each other and see what's been going on. So, flooding is calmed down there.
In our house, yes, but in the neighborhood, no. It's just continuing to creep and fill. And so the neighbors right next to us, you can't see their property at all because it's all completely underwater. It looks like there's an entire lake next to
Which
us.
side are you talking about?
Well, if you're facing the road, they're on our right.
Okay.
And and then the end of our road that we live on is underwater now. So I can't drive my car through it, and we have to take Neil's truck. And so it's just bizarre that it hasn't rained in days, but the flooding is continuing to rise in certain areas. Now the sun's been out for several days, so that's glorious, and we've
Mhm.
enjoyed that. But he's still surrounded by water.
I thought about sharing the text that I sent you in the group, asking you that I was putting on orders the days of sunshine and no rain and no storms and
Very
over
quick.
75. And you
Mhm.
replied with, I'm sorry, that's out of stock. But it would be nice for it to
It
not be
would
freezing
be.
cold. And it seems like every time we come in April, it's cold.
Mhm.
Not supposed to be.
Well, you'd think, and we're kind of in this weekend jag of storms on the weekends. So this
Mhm.
past Sunday, now when this airs, it will have been the Sunday before. It was a sunny day, and everybody was commenting on, we think this is our first sunny Sunday since we have
Mhm.
moved into this new building, which was in
Wow.
January. So,
Man.
yes. Yeah.
Well, so you want to talk about Equipped for a minute?
Yeah, sure. So when this airs, it comes out on Monday. It'll be that Thursday of this week that it starts, and we're have a bunch of sessions. We have food trucks, we have singing, a bookstore, lots of great speakers, including John and Carla Moore coming in. Our theme is Behold the Glory of the Lord from Isaiah. All the lessons are going to be studies from the book of Isaiah, so that's going to be amazing. And you and I on Friday at 3 o'clock are going to be recording our next episode of Looking Up. So that's always fun. We did that for the first time last year. Having all the women in the room with us is really, really fun. So I'm looking forward to that. And on that note, we thought we should let everybody know it's very possible that the next episode then won't come out Monday morning because I have to wait for the AV guys to get that to me, that recording, before I can upload it and get it out in podcast land. So,
So sometime next week, but probably not Monday.
yes, and they're going to be working on that kind of stuff for tons of sessions. And so, I'd like to put us at the top of the list, but I don't have that kind of authority. Hey, do you know who we are?
Come on now. That might put us at the bottom of the list if you
They
said
might,
that.
yeah, just for that
Yeah.
orneriness. Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm
I
excited to be
am too.
here.
Hmm.
It's been good. This is the third year, right?
Third year, and first year in our new building. So we'll be kind of figuring things out. Where's what gonna go and how's it all gonna work? But we're all excited. It's gonna be great. So
Yep.
we've been getting people registered from all over, coming in from all different states. And so we're excited to see them. And
Well, hopefully I won't do there what I did here last Sunday. This is my one of my embarrassing moments for the week.
oh, good.
Yeah.
Do
And it's not
share.
horrible, but it was
Oh,
embarrassing. You want it to be horrible, huh? I only put mascara on one eye. And
oh,
so I mean, I didn't notice anybody looking at me like something's off there. But when I washed my face that night and I used my, eye makeup remover and I'm cleaning out off my eyelashes and this comes off black and this there's nothing. I'm thinking I went all day long with mascara on one eye.
you just looked a little brighter on one side. Maybe it
Yeah,
looked like you were winking at everybody.
I don't know. I mean, as embarrassing things go, it's not terrible, but I thought,
Yeah.
oh
Did
boy,
you put it on your better eye at least?
even do I have a better eye?
I don't know.
I guess everybody has a better side. I don't know. What'd y'all do this weekend? This past weekend?
I've done a lot of things. I jotted them down so I wouldn't forget. Well, Neil and I went with my sister and her husband to see Tim Hawkins,
Oh,
excuse me,
fun.
in the Nashville area.
Mhm.
And I was kind of goofing off. You kind of, when you park, it's this huge parking lot, and there was this huge line of everybody waiting to get in and get their tickets scanned and all that. And I was kind of goofing off. I typically do when I'm with my sister. But, I'm in Nashville. Who's going to know? And Christy, she elbows me and points, and right, the line snakes around. So the part of the line going beside us in the other direction, there was Brad Harrop standing there with his wife and this other couple that was with them, and she's like elbowing me and pointing it out. And then I saw them and I went, hey, and then I was like,
Did they see
ah,
you goofing off?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
I told Neil, I guess I better tone it down and act
Mhm.
like a normal person since there's people here that we actually know.
You need to be sedate and dignified.
That's right. That's right. But he did a great job. It was a lot of fun. And the last and only time I'd ever been to a Tim Hawkins performance was in Denver, and he suffered from altitude
I
sickness,
remember you telling me about that.
completely forgot his lines after only a few minutes and left the stage.
Thanks.
Yeah. So we kind of joked about walking up to him and saying, oh, we went to see you one time in Denver, but figured that
Hmm.
would be very nice.
I've never heard of that. I mean, that particular symptom of altitude sickness.
Me neither. But some people get really bad headaches, and
Hmm.
he could have been a little dehydrated.
Yeah.
Who
And if you
knows?
just fly in that day and you don't have any time to acclimate.
Exactly. Who knows?
Hmm.
But we had a good time, and then um, so Monday I got to take my first pickleball lesson,
Are
which
you
was
the queen of pickleball
so
now?
much fun. No, no, no. This was very basic. It was like how to hit the ball, how to serve the ball.
Hmm.
Some of the techie side of the court part, like there's this little place called the kitchen that you're
Yeah.
not supposed to step in, all that kind of stuff. We didn't actually play a game. The whole hour was spent in more like form and stuff. But our little instructor was this 17-year-old kid.
Hmm.
And he is so good. He's like a little adult. I guess he is practically an adult, but he was the perfect blend of actual instruction and training and helping you correct your form and stuff, but
Hmm.
motivation, encouragement, so you didn't feel like an idiot.
Yeah. You didn't look like an idiot. You look like
Well,
a
there's
perfect teacher.
kind of a lot to remember when you're first learning it. And at one point I said something like, if I just didn't have to think about it so fast, because I'd actually hit the ball the right way, but then he'd say, great, great. But you stepped
But
in the kitchen.
yeah.
Oh, I forgot that part. So but anyway, we had so much fun that I did it with Hillary Hammer. She's the one that set it all up, and she knows this guy. But she's gone ahead and arranged for us to do two more lessons the next 2 Mondays.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll get to play a game and figure the rest of it out too. But in the morning, I'm going to Portland to play with my sister on their community courts. And since I haven't actually played a game, we'll see how that goes.
She's played though, doesn't she like to play?
I don't know that she's played.
Oh, I thought you told me that she had played before.
I don't
Well,
think
and y'all,
so.
neither one of y'all are competitive at all, so it'll probably be a
Yeah, right.
easy
So there won't
little
there won't be a
friendly
problem.
game. Yeah,
Yeah.
no problems.
Yeah. In fact, Hillary said, "Do you think Barrett and Neil would play pickleball with us?" And I was like, "Oh, I know Neil would. Now you need to understand something about Neil."
Yeah. You might not want to do that. Let
Yeah,
Barrett
he's
and
a
Neil
little
play on
competitive.
their own
Neil
court.
likes to talk smack on the court, you
Mhm.
know. So I said, "You might never look at him the same in the pulpit again."
Mhm. Well, you're just as competitive. You don't talk smack like he does, but it's coming out of your eyes.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is true. I don't deny it.
Well, that's fun. I'm glad you got to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. What'd you do?
Oh, we got home from Greece, so that was a good thing. We didn't get home until Friday though. So you and I recorded on Wednesday. It was my Wednesday afternoon, and we were leaving the next day. We were supposed to leave on Wednesday. So Thursday we did okay with the flights. Um, we went from Athens to Paris, Paris to uh Atlanta. And when we landed in Atlanta, or as we were approaching Atlanta, there was some big old thunderheads.
Hmm.
Oh, I hate flying through that kind of turbulence. And it was pretty, I mean, not scary, but a little bit. But we landed and we got there okay. We had like an hour and a half, 2 hours until our next flight to Austin. But we're sitting and watching out the windows and I looked at the radar. I think I sent you a picture of it. And
Hmm.
like your storms are messing me up. And it was massive. I mean, it was huge storm system.
Hmm.
And so we kept getting notifications. Your flight, it was supposed to be like at 9. Your flight is now taking off at 10:10. Your flight is now taking off at 10:50. Your flight is now at 12:01. And the last time I saw, it was landing in Austin at 2:45 in the morning. And so Delta was good enough to put us in a hotel. I was very grateful for that because it was a long time getting, they tell you that the hotel is 2 miles from the airport,
Hmm.
but you don't think about the airport. The airport itself is like 20 miles around. And
Yeah,
so,
it's
yeah,
huge.
it's 2 miles from the exterior edge. It took us like 45 minutes to get there, but we got there. We got a good night's sleep. But then I found out a day or two later that there were two flights that were coming in to Atlanta from Mexico, I think. There were two international flights that they were coming in at about the same time we were supposed to be taking off. And they couldn't because of the storms, and they landed in Montgomery, Alabama, which does not have a customs. Did you hear about this?
No.
They don't have a customs area where they can clear customs and then enter the country. So those two plane loads full of people had to sit on the tarmac all night long
In the plane.
in the plane.
Oh.
And man, talk about a nightmare. So I mean, I wasn't upset or anything about what happened to us. I was just ready to be home. But then when I heard about that, I thought, "Huh,
Ooh,
that was
yeah.
nothing. We had no problems at all because we got
Mhm.
on a flight the next day and got home. But those poor people in the same storm system had to sit. I mean, even that would be kind of scary to sit on a plane with
Mhm.
what I saw looked like even tornado type weather going on around them. So
Yikes.
I was thankful for that. But anyway, we got home on Friday afternoon, and Livy's birthday party was Saturday. We got to go to that. She'll be 3 in a couple weeks, but accommodating different schedules, they had her party on Saturday. So I was excited about that. Got to see her. She's so much fun. 3 is such a fun age.
Hmm. Hmm. Well,
And,
go ahead.
well, this is a little bit unrelated. So if
Well, I
you
was
have,
just going to say, Janelle told us that little Jude has started this thing where when he knows he's in trouble and he's about to get a spanking, he'll fold his hands like he's about to say a prayer.
maybe he is praying.
She was like, "Do you know how hard it is to spank a child?"
Mhm.
He's got his hands folded in prayer.
So he's
Like,
smart in all different kinds
Jesus
of ways.
knows. That's right.
He's praying, that's smart, and he's also knowing he's cute.
Exactly.
Well, all I was going to say was that I watched Pride and Prejudice on the plane, and I have never seen that movie before. Have you seen it?
Well, I've seen all of them. Which version did you watch?
You've seen all of them. I was pretty proud of myself for seeing this one because all of my friends have seen it. And I mean, all of my friends, I say, people all the time ask me, have you read that? No, I have not read that. Have you watched it? No, it's the one with Keira Knightley. So it's like 20 years old. And I enjoyed it. I think
Oh, look at you.
I know I'm growing up. I'd started
Yeah.
it a few times, but I don't know why. I just couldn't get into it. I think it's sometimes when it's a different accent, you have to work harder to understand.
Hmm.
And so, but it was really good.
Well, good. Now you're cultured.
Yeah.
There's a whole world. There's a
Grown
whole
up and
oh,
cultured.
watch Emma.
I have seen that years ago. Gwyneth Paltrow.
Yes. Okay,
I
how
don't
about
remember much
Sense and
about it.
Sensibility with Kate
Mm,
Winslet? And nope,
I'd
that
have to,
watch that one next.
okay. So I
That one's
can get
really
even more
good.
culture.
Yes, that one's really good.
Yeah. I do remember about Emma that it was hard for me to like process. John always wants to turn on the closed caption. Like
Hmm.
he'll turn that on anyway. And
Hmm.
I can't stand that because instead of watching the movie, I'm reading the words.
Yeah,
And
same
it's
here.
so distracting to me. But he's always like, well, I can't understand. So I guess in his mind, he can separate the movie from the words and then just look at the words if he needs them. But
Hmm.
anyway, I just remember having a hard time with the accent. My brain.
Sounds
What'd
a
you
little
think?
different than Texas people, huh?
Yeah, definitely, for sure. What'd you think about the space flight with those women? Did you see all that?
No, I didn't.
So Katy Perry, the singer, and apparently two or three other famous women and two other non-famous smart women did a
Hmm.
space flight.
Yeah, I've only seen the jokes going around about it. I haven't
Okay,
actually
well, yeah, that's what
read
I
the
was
real
kind of
news.
wondering about because they went up for like 10 minutes and came back down. And I saw a meme today that was, had a man's face and he's like got this snarky look on his face. And like, this is what the astronauts who got stuck in space for 9 months were
I think
saying
that's the
about
one I
Katy
saw.
Perry kissing the ground. I don't know how
Yeah,
to feel about that. I don't know how much it cost. I forgot to look that up, but I bet it's millions of dollars that they paid to do that
can't
minute
imagine.
space flight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, I thought that was interesting. So anyway, what else you got?
Well, I was going to tell you that Holly Bowman brought her girls over to see Apricot the other day, and it was kind of funny because I forget the things that were new to me, and that now are just a regular part of our life. I forget how new it can be to other people. And so, in fact, in my memories the other day, it showed up that we had just got our first egg 5 years ago.
Hmm.
So it's just hard for me to even believe that we've had chickens for over 5 years now. But so her little girls get out, they're 3 and 5 and adorable, and they get out. Well, my chickens are free ranging. We free range them one day a week now. They're free ranging that day. And they first see them, they're like, and they start backing away. And I was like, oh, are you afraid of the chickens? And I had pulled out the mealworms for them to give chickens treats. And I thought they could feed the cow, and all this other kind of stuff. Well, anyway, so I said, well, if you feed them treats, they'll like you. So I open up the bag of mealworms and I reach into there, and Holly's leaning over there and she's looking in that bag. And she said, oh, oh, you just touch it with your hands. And I just kind of looked
They're
at it and I looked
worms.
at, the mealworms in my hands, and I thought, well, yeah, I guess that does look kind of gross. I mean, they're dry, they're dehydrated. But, and I'd forgotten that 5 years ago when we first got chickens and I found out about that being a treat and we first got them, I remember thinking, I need a scoop or something. I am not touching these things, because that's disgusting. And now I don't think anything of it. I just reach in there willy nilly and, throw the
Mhm.
worms. And so, and it seemed like there were a couple little things that, when we're out there looking at the cow and of things that even though we haven't been doing it for very long and I still feel like a poser, I still forget there are things that somebody else might not think about who
Yeah.
hasn't been around it at all. And so I started waxing philosophical. And I thought, we probably do this with our faith. Sometimes we're on a journey still, but we've been places that maybe sometimes we forget about,
Mhm.
that can still be so new to other people who have never been around it, they've never been exposed to it, and we just forget.
Yeah.
They're not familiar with this word, or this might need an explanation, or this might be something that's completely foreign to them, and they might look at you like, yeah, you do what? You know? So anyway,
I
that
think
was,
about that all the time with words like lingo,
yes,
things
yes.
that we say to each other. You and I understand because we've been in this
Mhm.
for a long time, lifetime, but new people need a little explanation.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So,
Good
but it was
analogy.
sweet. It was sweet to see them out there with Apricot. Holly got a really cute picture of them with her, and I was like, those three little cuties in my barn.
Hope she washed her hands before she went and baked some more bread.
I'm sure she did. She is very talented at the bread thing.
Yeah, I've seen her pictures.
Oh man. It's
In fact, I'm thinking next week I need to visit her home bakery, buy
yeah,
something.
you need to place an order for that. What is it, babka or whatever? That
The
chocolate
vodka.
swirl. Yeah,
Hmm.
chocolate swirl bread. That stuff is incredible.
This, you need to share the website with me again so I can do that because
Okay.
I really do want to get some stuff from her.
Yeah, I think she has an Instagram page. I think it's called Blue Cave Bakery. They
Mhm.
live right near Mammoth Cave.
Yeah, that's what I've seen her Instagram. So
Hmm.
maybe I guess I could just follow a link from there.
Yeah, she has the link in the profile on her Instagram, but if I think about it, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I definitely
That
want to
reminds
order
me,
some
I
stuff.
forgot to tell you and I don't know why it reminds me. I just had a thought that when we were doing our pickleball lesson, there's a thing that they do that's actually called dink, which is exactly what it sounds like. You're just, like just barely dropping the ball in front of you. And but it's part of the terminology for pickleball. And in my family, we have only used that word when we're being funny. So I felt so immature because I was wanting to crack up. Every time Will was our instructor, every time he said the word, I'm like trying not to grin or laugh, and I just
So how do you use it at home? What does it mean when you're saying it
well,
at home?
like, oh, so okay, now you're gonna make me share stuff and make me
Huh?
look dumb. But when we play the game aggravation and you roll a one, and so you only get to move your marble one little space, I always go dink.
Mhm.
So, and it's, or if something is unimpressive or underwhelming, it's dinky,
Yeah.
it's just one of those kind of silly little words. And so anyway, he was complimenting us. He was complimenting us on our dinks. Like, very good. That was a great dink. That was a good dink.
And
And
you're turning
I
into a
finally
4-year-old
said,
yourself.
I was like, that's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me, And I think one time I said, I'm awfully good at dinking.
You need a t-shirt that says something along the lines of,
Great
I'm a great
dink.
thinker,
Yeah,
thinker and dinker.
that's right. Oh, yeah.
Well,
That
you
boorish and
found your new
immature.
game. I knew you would love it. I knew it'd be right up your alley because you love tennis. And I mean, it's
Mhm.
basically tennis on a smaller court with different rules. I don't remember
Yeah,
the rules. I like to play without rules myself. Just hit the ball back and forth.
yeah.
But
I
you
kind of
play with
wish I didn't know tennis because it's confusing for me. There's enough differences, that it's kind of confusing for me. But yeah, I texted Cheryl that
Mm-hmm.
day and said, I thought of you because she's the very first person I ever heard mention about it years ago when she started playing and said, you would love this.
Mm-hmm.
And all this time I've wanted to learn and just now. So I texted her, I said, thought of you, finally had my first pickleball lesson.
Wes and Terry played in college.
No way.
Yeah,
See, I
that's
didn't
what I
even know it was
said.
around that long. I
Me
thought it was
either.
relatively new on the scene.
Yeah, eons and eons ago,
Eons ago.
forever ago.
Golly.
Well, that would have been the 80s, early 80s, I'm assuming. So
Well, Wes is 10 years older than me, so.
mhm.
Mm.
He's in his 60s. He's an old man. I'm sure he's going to find out. I'm sure he's listening.
Oh, yeah.
Somebody can tell him. Whoever's listening that knows Wes Altry, tell him.
Yeah. He's in that 0.03% of the male population that listens. Hi, Neil.
Yeah. I always forget when I'm talking that Neil's listening. It makes me self-conscious.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are we done with our
I
silly
think
chit chat?
so. Let me see. Yep.
Okay. So ready for topic?
Sure.
Okay. We are going to talk about home field advantage. That's what we're calling it anyway. And it's funny because when I sent you the topic, you wrote back, isn't that what your ladies' day is this weekend? Well, yes, it is. But that was completely coincidental because the funny story, we're going to be in Dalton, Georgia this weekend. By the time the podcast airs, it'll be over. But so Celicia and I were going back and forth trying to decide what the topic was going to be. And she wanted me to be able to do something that I'd done before. And so, but she wanted it to be on home and family because that's what John's going to be speaking in gospel meeting on home and family that same, the days following. So I had one called The Home is a Mission Field. And then we kind of started joking about field, what can we talk about marriage as being a field? And she said, battlefield? Your marriage is a battlefield. So we were just joking back and forth. So we ended up calling the whole weekend is for Ladies' Day is called Home Field Advantage. But, it's one of those things that I probably won't even really try to follow that theme. It's just going to be a lesson on home and family, marriage and family. But when I was preparing for it, all that to say, when I was preparing for it, I came across an article by Kristen Arbuckle. And you and I both know Kristen from Bear Valley. She and her
Mhm.
husband Drew graduated, I want to say 17 or 18, 2017 or 18. And she's an excellent, excellent author. Anything she writes, I always think it's so good. She is the author of a book, and I was going to bring it in here. This is the problem. I had books in Colorado, books here, and it's somewhere, and I can't find it. And I want to read it and recommend it, and I haven't read it all the way through. Um, and I meant to write down the name of it. I'll link it next week. It's
It's a
about
pretty book too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful book. It's
Mhm.
green. I remember it's green. It's a larger format, but I'll link it next week about raising your family. But anyway, it got me to thinking when I was kind of doing some prep for this weekend, and then when I read this article about some of the things that we were saying last week during the podcast about feeling uncomfortable in Greece and being ready to go home. And I think I was whining. In fact, when I listened to it later, I was a little bit embarrassed because, like, what are you whining about, Carla? There's nothing going on that you need to whine about. But just
Because you
that
were
discomfort.
tired. You were
Well, I was
still
tired.
there.
Yeah, I know, but still. But, you know, it wasn't any hard time. But I think that on the whole, we really should feel like we are sojourners. I mean, the Bible tells us we're sojourners in a strange land. This world that we're living in is not really our home. We're just a passing through. But you just feel that the culture around us, and sometimes we feel it more than other times about this anti-Christian sentiment that has increased since my kids were young. And I remember first hearing that and thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. But the older I get, the more I see. It just feels like sometimes that Christians are the only group of people, if you will, that it's okay to discriminate against or say rude things about, and nobody is going to say anything about it. If
Mhm.
you said that about a racial group or, any other demographic 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 of people, you'd get in trouble. But anyway, so I just got to thinking when I was reading Kristen's article that this is what she was talking about, and I just want to read the first paragraph. The name of the article is called Along the Way, and this is the first paragraph. She says athletes know the value of home field advantage. The atmosphere is familiar and the fans are supportive. Regardless of the score, the home team will be encouraged to do their best. Playing away games is a different story. Opposing fans often ridicule and shout insults. Great plays are met with silence, and encouragement only comes from within. So, thinking about our boys played sports and thinking about how when you're at home playing the game at home, you have this level of comfort because you know that you're surrounded by the rest of your team's families, and a lot of the community comes and watches the game and cheers, and you just have more noise and you have more encouragement and the band is playing loud for you. But then when you play an away game, it's not all the parents can make it, and it's just a smaller group of people, and the other side's community has shown up for them and they have the home field advantage. So just thinking about that in relation to what we are as Christians in this world and how we do not have the home field advantage here. This is this is Satan's world. And I remember the first time I really understood that he is the prince of this world. The Bible says that he is the prince of this world. And it's kind of scary. I remember as a child, my dad, I know I've said this before, but I said something about a Ouija board or, just talking about ghosts. And I know, I don't understand all that there is to know. I'm not going to go into that, but Satan is real. And there are things going on that are against us as Christians. Ephesians 2 says that he's the prince of the power of the air. And John 12 says he's the rule of this world. Of course, he's going to be cast out. But for right now, he is in charge of this world. And in what we're trying to do is fight against him. And I just think sometimes we forget that we are, you and I don't forget, but Christians forget we're on the same team. And we need to band together and fight against those that do have the home field advantage. And so, anyway, that's kind of what I wanted us to talk about, some practical ways maybe that we can uh, remember to be on the same team and to support one another and encourage one another. And thinking about, Ephesians 6:12 talks about our struggle, that it's not against flesh and blood, but it's against rulers and powers, the world forces of darkness. But then it also says that if we take up the full armor of God, then we will have his power and his might that is available to us, and we'll be able to defeat those forces. So anyway, that's what I think we should talk about. You have any thoughts so far?
Well, you said you corrected yourself and said, "Well, you and I don't forget." And I couldn't help but think, "Well, I know I do," because I imagine that anytime I treat a brother or sister in Christ in a way that I shouldn't, or think thoughts about them that I shouldn't, or if I'm frustrated or aggravated, or if I gossip, or if I compare myself and feel competitive or assume poor motives, any number of things that I can do that to a fellow Christian is forgetting that we're on the same side, and I'm not rooting for them anymore. I'm not cheering them on. I'm viewing them as, a thorn or a competition or, any other number of things that our fleshly side can get in the way instead of remembering, like you said, that we're on the same team. Same thing happens in the home
Yeah.
and marriage.
Yeah. In fact, you asked me if I was kind of going towards marriage and family when I was bringing up this topic, and that's definitely part of it. I remember my cousin Natalie talking about sometimes she has to remind herself when they get in a conflict. When you're in a conflict, you're facing one another and you're like nagging on one another, you're arguing with one another, you're just having this looking at one another and negatively and fighting, whatever. But really, we should be side by side facing the enemy, not facing each other as enemies, but facing the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so are we for each other? When you think about the analogy of, I think about a football game or a basketball game because the boys did so much of that when they were younger. And you all at the home team sits on the same side. You don't, maybe there's a few that sit on the other side for a better view or whatever. So for the nitpicky people out there that say, I would sit on the other side, home team sits together. Are we all sitting on the same side? And are we pulling for God's team? Is it our team, or are we silent? Maybe there's some ways that we forget that we're not cheering. I don't want to make this too silly or anything, but if maybe we're silent about our faith. Have you ever been at a game, maybe sometimes where someone's just sitting there? I was very noisy. I was very embarrassing to my children, I think, when they played games, because a friend and we had cans with screws and nuts and bolts and stuff, and we taped them together and we'd shake them and make a lot of noise and yell and scream and stomp our feet to encourage the boys while they were playing. Not everybody does that. And I don't mean you have to do that, but sometimes you just sit silently and maybe we don't know whose side that person is on. If we don't recognize and we don't know whose side they're on, maybe we're passive about uh, in a game, not showing our support. Just thinking about this in relation to our Christianity and our faith and within our local body or the church worldwide. Are we passive? And I've been thinking about this too, because I have a ladies' weekend in a few weeks that we're going to be talking about a spiritual reset. And some of the warning signs that I think we should look for, and one of them I think is passivity. And if we really do have one foot in the world and one foot in the church, you can't do that. You just really it's all in one way or another, even if we don't realize it.
Mhm.
So being passive, I think, is one of those warning signs that I think we need to look for. And I think we can also unknowingly help the other side if we're not in support of the side, of God's side. And really, I do spiritually think that that's absolutely the case. Bible says you can't serve both. You're serving one or the other. So we have to pick a side and decide whose team we're going to cheer for. So, marriage and family, what do you think about that as far as being cheering for the home team? I hope I'm being clear here.
I'm actually loving this analogy, and I don't think it's silly at all. And in so many ways, I can see how just picturing that would make choices and decisions and attitudes a lot easier, because on the field, there are clearly two teams, and one you're rooting for and the other's the opponent. And that plays out spiritually, and we read all about that in the Bible. Like you say, we have the ruler of this world, and he's our opponent, he's our adversary. And then you have the players, and then you have the fans in the stands. You were talking about how into it you guys were. There was no doubt in anybody's mind who you were rooting for and what you were doing there, because you were so vocal about it, and you weren't ashamed. You weren't embarrassed. You were just, all that mattered to you was that the players on the field heard you and knew that you loved them. And I can just see that so clearly in the day to day, whether I'm talking about my Christian faith, is it that obvious to everybody around me that I'm a follower of Christ, and that I love his people, because of the way I act and the things that I say and who I'm rooting for and cheering on, and especially in the home,
Mhm.
you know, um, do the people in my home know that I'm their number one fan, if you will, because of how I talk to them and treat them and root for them. And anytime someone drops the ball, that's okay. Pick it up. We'll keep going. We've got this. You've got this. And I
Mhm.
love the analogy. I think it's really good.
Yeah. And the knowledge that we're going to win in the end, I think, is something we have to keep in mind too. And, we don't have that same assurance in physical, the sports that we're talking about. But um, I have a friend, Angela. She's the one I was talking about that we would shake the cans together. And she always impressed me so much because we could be down 52-2 at the end of the fourth quarter. And she's still yelling and saying, "Come on, boys, you can do it. We can do this. We're doing this together." And I remember so many times thinking, no, we are not going to be able to do this together because there's 22 seconds left and we're down 49 points. And, but with this, what we're talking about here spiritually, we know we're going to win. There's going to be some battles that we feel like we've lost, but in the end, we're going to win the war. And we know who, who the ultimate victor is. So that to me is encouraging. And that's maybe a little bit different than the analogy that we're talking about. But what about, well, think about this a little bit more. We talk about, I remember my mother would always say, love not the world nor the things in the world. Because I would say something like, oh, I love this bread or I love this, whatever. Love not the world. And so, we can get caught up sometimes. I know she was being silly about that. And you can enjoy things God intended for us to enjoy it. But I wonder what it looks like when we are so much more in the world than we are in the church. And what are some of those warning signs that maybe we need to look for in our own lives that indicate that we are not pulling for our team? What is it that maybe we need to be careful about when we're so busy with things that are that our kids are involved in, lessons or homework, things like that. I'm trying to think deeper here, but what are some things that we need to be careful about as far as showing that we are not so uh, involved in what's really important as opposed to being in the world? Is that clear? Does that you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I was just thinking that God has a lot to say about being careful where our treasure is, where our heart lies, what we idolize. We all um, give our hearts to something. We all worship something. And usually it's pretty clear. It becomes obvious because we have things that we devote to it, whatever that it is, and time, money, resources, passion, that kind of thing. And it becomes pretty clear. So I imagine the litmus test would be where we're spending our time and throwing our heart into and sacrificing for. And, does it look more like those worldly, temporary things? And I know there's some discernment that has to take place because we do live in this world, and we do have jobs and we do eat bread.
Mhm.
We take care of our families and we're exposed to all kinds of things. Some things are just, not get aroundable. But even then, is where's the balance and where's the direction and what are we leaning into and what are we leaning on, as the foundation of our homes and life choices.
Yeah. Just thinking about even something like friends. Who who do we spend most of our time with?
Mm-hmm.
And again, like you said, discernment plays a part here because it could be that you've got some really good friends that encourage you that are not members of the church, but they encourage you in your walk of faith, and maybe you can have an influence on them too. There are good people in the world that can encourage you to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes I feel like the people that we choose to spend most of our time with are not really going to help us get to heaven. And maybe they're in some ways even preventing that, if they're encouraging us to spend more time doing something that we really shouldn't be doing, or distracting us from what's really important, or coming between our husband, between us and our husband, or there's any number of things that can happen when the people that we spend most of our time with don't really care about the same things that we're trying to care about. So just think that's something maybe we need to be careful about. What about within the church? Are we on the same side? And it seems like we could just say, well, of course we are. We're all members of the Cumberland Trace Church of Christ, or the Dripping Springs Church of Christ. But I don't think we always show that by our actions, whether it's something that we actually do, our behavior, or our presence on social media. Um, are we on the same side? And I think this is an area that the devil can see a chink in our armor when we are fractured within our home congregations or the church worldwide, because, with the internet, the church worldwide has become much closer because we can talk to one another across the world. We can know what things are going on in Africa or in Europe or wherever because of the internet. So the fighting that goes on, the disagreements, the snarkiness, and the challenges and things like that are so discouraging to me, because I feel like it just exposes this weakness that we have and this disagreement. And again, we're facing one another and yelling at one another. Maybe we're not doing it really yelling, but sometimes when you see things, arguments going on, it's embarrassing to me, but it's also, uh, it just exposes a weakness that we have, I think, to the world and to the devil, frankly, to the devil. Have you seen
Yeah,
that,
it's
Tracy?
kind of a unique, I mean, in relatively recent history, it's a unique challenge for God's people because, just like you, we keep hearing things about how the human body or the human mind was not meant to know about all the tragedies around the world. And and it used to be that we only knew about things going on in our own communities, because it wasn't on air 24/7,
Mhm.
instant news, instant sharing, instant. And in the same way, it presents similar challenges when it comes to, even like you're talking about, when I don't know if you were talking about this specifically, but when you were talking about the bickering and stuff like that that goes on, my mind went to the online stuff that you see
Mhm.
on social media or other places like that. And a lot of people are pretty free with their opinions or accusations, and a lot maybe braver way than they would be if they were talking to somebody face to face.
Mhm.
And I also feel like we're exposed to a lot more of that instead of within our own congregations, and maybe it used to be that the personality differences and conflict was challenging enough when it was just the people that you saw face to face. And but
Letters
now, what's that?
or letters, just
Or
printed letters.
letters. Yeah, snail mail, even. But now that your audience and your soapbox stand is so much greater, it's greater responsibility on our part because more people see it, more people witness it. What kind of damage are we doing? Are we building up the body, or are we making it look like we're, fractured into all these different tiny pieces and warring against one another, which is heartbreaking.
Yeah, and I don't think that it would come as any surprise to anyone in the world that there are problems, or that there are disagreements or differences of opinion.
Mhm,
And so it's not so much that I feel like we can't share some of that, but
mhm,
when it's so obvious to people that we despise one another, or we have no use for someone else because they don't hold to this same thought or feeling that we have. And that really does indicate that there's a weakness. And I think about congregations that are so fractured, and half of the people leave and half of the people stay. And I don't have any particular congregation in mind, but I just think that the community sees, and it hurts the cause of Christ because we are so disagreeable to one another. Having a disagreement's one thing, but being disagreeable and being, I think some people would say bold and brave, but I think in a lot of ways it's so against the teachings that we find in scripture. So
mhm,
I just think we have to be really careful. Um, So some of the things that in Kristen's article that she said things that we should watch for. One of them, she said, is are our church leaders getting enough time to rest, refuel, and be surrounded by others so they know that they aren't the only ones? In her article, she talked about Elijah, and after the challenge, the duel with the prophets of Baal up on Mount Carmel, and he defeated them, God defeated them, but Elijah, was the one that was working what was going on. And so they defeated the prophets of Baal. Afterwards, Jezebel threatened him and he ran. And it's funny, sometimes you see he was exhausted, and God sent him some food and told him to lay down and sleep. So it's like you just need a little sleep and a little snack sometimes.
mhm,
That's what I'm saying is funny, although the story's not funny. But God provided what he needed, and one of the things was rest. One of the things was food, and then a purpose. God gave him a purpose, things that he needed to do for God. So that's what Kristen's talking about here. Are we giving our church leaders time to rest and refuel and to know what their purpose is? Because Elijah said he was the only one left, and God said, "You are not the only one left." Is it 7,000 that they're still? Was it 6,000 or 7,000 that still remained? So she said also, is their purpose redefined regularly? Which I thought was interesting. I had to think about that. The are our the elders or our church leaders, maybe the ministers, do we are we looking out for them? Because I think a lot of times they're the ones that are going to feel this the most, feel the responsibility of making sure that we're united as a family and watching out for things, the arrows or the problems or the attacks from the devil that come in the form of other people. They're constantly on guard, or that's their job, to be constantly on guard and to shepherd us. So what are we doing to support them? And I thought that was something that is really a good thought. Are we lifting them up? Prayer, of course, is the best thing we can do for them, but do we tell them that we're praying for them?
mhm,
And if we tell them, are we telling them exactly what we're praying for them? I think it's just, I am always encouraged to know, okay, you're praying for me. What are you praying for me? I'm praying for you that you stay encouraged, that you know that we support what you do, that we see that the things that you are having to go through are difficult, and that other people may disagree, but we want you to know that we support you. I
mhm.
think there are things that we can tell them specifically that we're praying for them. Um, First Timothy 5 says that they're counted worthy of double honor. What does that mean? What does that look like? Are we really showing the honor that we need to for our church leaders? Because you and I were married to preachers. You're the daughter of a preacher. My dad was an elder and a preacher. So we know the weight that they carry. So I think this is an excellent suggestion to watch to see that the church leaders are receiving the support that they need. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I love when I hear it doesn't happen very often, but when I hear somebody praise something that the elders have done or thank them, it just makes my heart feel so good because they need that. They need their own cheering section. And if anybody's in the thick of things nonstop, it's our elders.
Yeah.
And the pressure, the hard decisions, the tough conversations, the things happening that nobody will know about because they always have to take the high road, the criticisms they receive, it is not an easy job. And to know, for them to know that people have their back and they have their own cheering section and people rooting them on, it's got to make it easier for them to keep on and to keep doing the hard things and find it that their role is valued,
Mm.
and but it also encourages the whole body because to hear other people lift up the leaders, that's contagious, and developing that, um what's the word I'm looking for, like atmosphere, a culture, that's what I'm trying to say, developing that culture of seeing and expressing appreciation is a good thing, and it becomes contagious, just like the very opposite of that is true. If you're always armchair quarterbacking, to go along with your analogy, and criticizing what they're doing or the choices they're making, or you never have a good word, or you're saying things about them to other people, that's also contagious. And what does that do to the body except fuel this idea of inadequacy among the leadership, or whatever it might be that's being grumbled about. So I love the idea of this public acknowledgement, public encouragement, not just to their face, but in front of other people. Social media would be a great avenue for that. Sometimes people say something nice about their preacher on social media. They might share a lesson or, say something they're grateful for their preacher or whatever. And that's fantastic. But I would love to see more of that concerning the elders in the body, and hold them up for their work and give them that honor verbally, publicly, often, sincerely.
Yeah,
Who would need it more than them?
right. And I'm thinking about publicly, yes, and I think that's such a great thing and that they would appreciate that. But before we do that, we have to have it in our own mind,
Mm-hmm.
thinking positively, not just verbally, but sometimes we fall into that trap of thinking negatively. And I don't understand why they did what they did. I don't know why he didn't say something about, whatever it is. I don't know. But in our minds, we think negative thoughts about the leadership. And like you mentioned, we don't know. We don't know the things that they're enduring, that they're hearing, that they've withheld from us because they have to, because it's a matter of privacy.
Mm-hmm.
So just reframing our thoughts about them. And sometimes it's easier than others because sometimes we do disagree with something that we have perceived that they've done, but we don't know the whole story. And so I think we just have to be careful in our minds and not just with our words, although that's what people see. But if we don't back it up with our thoughts and have those genuine, kind, considerate, compassionate thoughts towards our leadership, it's going to affect the words that come out of our mouth. I was just talking to a friend a couple weeks ago about her husband's an elder, and she told me that of course, there's things that elders don't tell their wives. It's a matter of confidentiality. But there were things that he probably could have told her that he didn't because he wanted her to be able to see these people on a daily basis without having to know certain things about them. And so I think about the burdens that they carry that they don't even tell their wives. And it's just, you and I know it's a hard place to be. So what can we do to uplift our elders
Mhm.
and our, not just the elders, but maybe the preachers' wives, the church secretary. I'm not saying she's a leader necessarily, or he, if it is, but what can we do to help those that are working to make our congregations run smoothly?
Mhm.
What about our family? She said, is your family establishing proper rhythms of rest and refuel? So within our family, what can we do to make sure that we maintain this home field advantage within our homes? And I think about, how do we communicate with one another? Are we communicating to our husbands, to our children, how we feel about them, that we love them, we appreciate them? Um, and I just always like to think about the home feeling like a tornado shelter, which you probably are all too familiar with lately. But just a place, and in my mind, it looks a lot nicer than probably your average tornado shelter looks like. But I think of the home as being, looking like your home, that when you shut the door to the outside, it's a safe place, that nothing from the outside can attack. You're protecting those within your tornado shelter. So what can we do within our families to make sure that they know that we're on their side, that we are um, doing whatever we can to make sure that they know who they are and the worth of who they are and how valuable they are to us and to God, and maintaining that home field advantage.
Yeah, that image was planted in my brain years ago, probably by some lady speaker or something, I don't remember, but about the environment of the home, how it should look vastly different from the environment out in the world, and that that safe harbor, the haven, if you will, of the home, that when you step into it, and of course, we're not talking about so much the physical building itself, but when you're with your people, and really when you're talking about your family or your church family, when you're with your people, there should be a huge difference.
Mhm.
And that comes down to speaking to each other kindly and, like you say, with love. That the respect is apparent. The greeting is joyful and loving, and you're welcomed, you're desired, you're embraced, you feel that you're wanted there and you want to be there, and it'd be so, so sad to have your home be the place that you dread stepping over the threshold into, not because it's messy, but because of the flavor of the environment. That are you stepping into a war zone that's filled with
Right.
conflict and accusations and hurled insults and snarky remarks and impatience and all these things that can become a habitual part of our relationships with the people that are closest to us. And then the closer you get towards your own home, there's that feeling of dread, or maybe you just take a big sigh, or maybe you have to pray, help me get through this, and not respond in kind. None of that should be a part of it. And
Mhm.
we each are responsible for our part in making sure the people in my sphere of influence feel loved and welcome and wanted, and you know that they can relax, they can settle in, they can feel peace and comfort, and they can take a deep breath.
Mhm.
And it's a powerful thing, really. And for me, I know there are times of conflict, transition, things can come along, and it can be so tempting to just get frustrated and throw your hands up in the air and say forget about it.
Mhm.
And that's exactly what the adversary wants, and whether it's with my own people in my own home or whether it's with my church family, that's exactly what he wants. Forget about it. You do you and I'll do me.
Mhm.
And that's very worldly. That is not a haven or an environment that looks different from what people see in the world. That is the world.
Mhm.
That kind of selfish, I want you to understand me and where I'm coming from, instead of putting the other, running ahead to show honor, and lowering ourselves and becoming like Christ with everybody that he puts in my path.
Yeah. I saw a demonstration of, it's like a marriage activity, and they had the couples standing back to back in this line. And the moderator said, okay, take a step away from each other for how do you say it? For every night this week that you did not have dinner with your spouse at the table, take a step away. So if you had, of the 7 nights that week, if you'd
Yeah.
had 5 nights that you didn't have dinner together at the table, take 5 steps away. And each of you are taking 5 steps away. And then he had other questions. Take a step away for each night that you did, that you were doing separate things. And the visual was just the
Mm.
distance that grows when we don't spend time together.
Ooh, that gave me chills. That may be the best thing you have ever shared on this podcast. That's really good. I mean, that's hard to get around. That's
Yeah.
hard to get around. And we
Yeah.
make those choices.
Yeah.
And then we wonder why our relationship is suffering.
Mhm. Well, the visual, John has used this before in marriage seminars about, if you're traveling together in a straight line and you constantly make corrections and you're pulling back together, but incrementally, the further away you grow from one another, the further apart. It's just you become further and further distant, and it's harder to come back together. If you're constantly making those adjustments, you can still do it, but it's it's just, we talk all the time about making sure that we spend time as a family, make sure we spend time as a couple, because the devil hates Christian families. The devil hates Christian marriage, and he's doing whatever he can to separate families, and he's doing a really good job, and it's really heartbreaking. But we're letting him. We're letting him do that because we're not being intentional about the the way we treat our families. And I think about parents or husband and wives who have conflict between them and how that rubs off on the rest of the family. And we think, okay, it's just between me and him. This is a conflict between me and him. I love my kids so much. But how does the conflict between me and my husband rub off
Mhm.
on and affect my children, anyone in the home, visitors in the home? There's, like you said, there's that, what word did you use? The flavor or the
Mhm.
the culture of the home. I can't remember what word you used, but people sense that, and especially kids do. And it really is a selfish thing when we don't uh, work to resolve the conflict that we have with our husband, not just because of that conflict needing to be resolved, but because of how it trickles down to the rest of the family. It really is a selfish thing. And, we see it a lot, and it fractures further and further and further. And not only that, but those kids go off, and what they've seen is conflict and trouble and struggle and anger, and that's what they carry into their own families. So it really is heartbreaking to see that this home field advantage that the devil has here, we're not taking advantage of our own. What team are we on? We're on the same team as a family. So that's
Is that a list somewhere? You said you saw that demonstration, step apart for every night you didn't have dinner together.
it
And there were
probably
all these
is.
questions. I'd love to see that, a copy of that list
I'll see if I can find
or
it.
where to find it. That's
It
really
was
good.
a video, so it
Okay.
would I'll see if I can find the video and make a list of
Remember
it.
that video I shared with you? I can't remember if we talked about it on here or not, or if I just shared it with you, but about in conflict, the couple they have to get face to face.
Nose to nose and
Yeah,
fight.
because I've always heard, and I hate this, I never do it, but hold hands with your spouse because it's hard to be mad while you're holding hands. I'm like, I am not holding your
Yeah.
hands. But this was, anytime you have words,
Hmm.
you have to get face to, I mean, they're like talking to each other, like their lips are almost touching. It makes me
Yeah.
so mad when you don't put your bowl in the sink and you're just like, and of course they're cracking up. They're like trying to really share what's
Yeah.
ticking them up, but
They're laughing.
they're
Yeah.
cracking up. Yeah. It's hilarious. We should try that. And I
You
think
know,
you said to me, all I can think about is what does their breath smell like?
yeah, that's the earthly part of me. That would be hilarious.
Brush your teeth and then have that conversation.
Yeah, and then laugh. That it really does work with me. If he can make me laugh, and it's not like he's trying to make me laugh, but I
Mhm.
remember not long ago having a conflict and when it struck me how utterly ridiculous our disagreement was, I just had to laugh. And it just breaks the tension and then you can say, why are we doing this?
Mhm.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Move on. You know. Anyway, so in the church with our leaders, which obviously our members need our support too, in our families. And then she also asked, is there anyone I can refresh? We've talked about this lots of times,
Mhm.
but it made me smile when I thought about using the same sports analogy. The water boys and girls on the sidelines with those bottles of water, and they're running to all the athletes and they're squeezing water in their mouth, whether they want it or not. They're like squeezing the Gatorade in the water. That's what we need to be doing is running around our team, refreshing, refueling, filling them up, giving them what they need. Sometimes we're the one that needs that water squeezed in our mouth too, but what can we do? I think there's the trainers that are, running around the sidelines, they're wrapping ankles and they're giving Tylenol or whatever they do on the sidelines. There's more to that, but we need to be doing that. Thinking about the parents in the stands, we've seen them, the ones that are yelling encouragement. We've also seen the ones that are not yelling encouragement. They're yelling stupid refs or get back in there. There's things like that. We can really take that down. But the parents or the community in the stands that are yelling encouragement, this is who we need to be. So practically, what does that look like? And of course, she brought up some things like maybe there's a young mom that needs you to sit with her kids and just give her a mental break for a little while. I saw, speaking of another reel that I saw, was a mom that said, when you need a break, and she had put a big coat with the hood on her over her head, and she climbed up on the door, put her feet on the doorknobs on either side, and hung the hood of the coat and pulled herself up in the coat so that the kids and they're all like walking through the house, mom, mom, and she's in the coat hanging on the door. Sometimes I felt like doing that, I remember. But what can we do to refresh young moms, teen moms? What about easing a financial burden? There's people who really struggle financially, and we've been there, and there have been people who have just handed us $100 bill and said, "You need a new pair of shoes." There's a woman that did that for John one time. Or y'all go out to dinner. And you need a break, go out to dinner. So can we ease a financial burden? And then she made this suggestion, which I thought was so great. She said, does a teen need to be pulled out of the world socially to spend some time in nature with mom and dad? And I thought, wow, they probably would balk at that because, kids think that what they really want is what they need. But to be pulled away from the world, and that means like put the phone down, leave it at the house, go take a hike with your mom, with your dad. We used to have mommy days with the boys. I loved just taking them out of school and we would go spend the day together. And I think that there's probably nothing else that resets kids more than just checking them out of the world,
Mhm.
even when they don't want that, and going and spending some time outside or just that one-on-one time, or maybe it's two-on-one time with mom and dad and the teenager. It's such a great idea to pull them out of the world socially. Maybe there's a widower out there that needs a home cooked meal, someone that is missing his wife and just needs a home cooked meal and just a seat at the table with other people, just to be around other people. There's a man here, is Clinton Rutherford, and he lost his wife a couple years ago, and now he goes and visits in the nursing home and runs errands for people. I just last night, my friend Linda said, "Yeah, Clinton brought me some groceries," and I think he's going to be 90 years old this summer. He's going to be 90 and he's still doing these things. But he needs us to refresh him. He does a lot of refreshing, but he needs us to refresh him. I know you've got people there that need that as well. Maybe just a note card that we mail to somebody telling them, I saw what you did and I appreciate what you did and you're doing a great job. So, just what are some ways that we can express to one another that we're on the same team and that we need each other and I'm here for you and I love you and I'm supporting you. And I know it's tough what you're going through, but we're here, we're doing this together. So that's basically just what I wanted us to kind of think about as far
Yeah.
as that we're all on the same team and what does that look like and how can we reinforce that with one another, make sure that we each know that we're on each other's side.
Yeah. We, if anybody wants to deep dive a little bit more into that refresh my heart thing, we did a whole episode on that. And I think we called it that, didn't we? Refresh my heart or refresh my heart in the Lord or something like that. But that was a good conversation. And I was thinking about some of the different things that you talked about, and I could picture people
Mhm.
that are good at that in those different ways. And you mentioned the specifics that happen on the sidelines or in the stands. And, sometimes they're getting an injury bandaged. Sometimes they're getting water squeezed in their mouth. Sometimes they're getting a pep talk. They all serve a different purpose. And on both sides of that, I could kind of see individuals that I know when somebody's broken, they're good at helping them through that,
Mhm.
and knowing exactly what they need. And when someone's just overwhelmed or discouraged, there are people that are really good at knowing how to give that pep talk. You can do this. I have faith in you. And if somebody's depleted, they're just absolutely exhausted. They're the ones that are good. They can see the need and the practical way to help them, give them that water, that refreshing thing that they need. And we can learn from those individuals that we can see acting in those areas and stepping in when there's a need. And then also, sometimes we are the ones that find ourselves in those different situations.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this before, but sometimes we don't want to receive that help, and I can't do it all on my own sometimes, but sometimes I need to let somebody step in and encourage me or wrap my ankle or whatever the case may be. So it's that give and take, just like in any family. And I pray that I express appreciation for the ones that have always been there for me in all those different ways and use their example to go do that for somebody else also.
While you're talking, I was thinking that I know there's people there at Cumberland Trace and there's people here. They're the ones that are, it's the same one that's giving the water, that's wrapping the ankle, that's giving the pep talk. It's that same person. What if next week we make it a purpose, make it a challenge among our family, our little looking up family to go find that person who
Mm-hmm.
is the one that's always providing and let's provide for them and hold them up because I think a lot of times those who are so busy taking care of others, they forget to take care of themselves, or we don't know what's going on in their life and they're having their own struggles. So we need to hold them up too. So maybe
Mm-hmm.
just a little extra challenge there.
Great idea.
Okay. I'm glad you're on my team.
Likewise.
Do you have anything else?
No,
Hey, do you have something good for me?
I do. So I brought it with me. This
Ooh,
is,
vitamins,
yes,
candy vitamins.
they're mints. I love to try different mints and gums and things like that. I'm a sucker for what's in the, right before you check out.
Yeah.
What's new here this week? But this one's Mentos, which I like anyway. But
Mhm.
they're mints, but they're also vitamins.
Mm. So
So
it's good for
so they've got a little B6, vitamin C, and vitamin B12, and the flavor is called Cool Fruity Mix.
you.
So
How many do you get
they're
per
really
day?
different. They kind of look like Smarties in the colors, like for those sweet tarts and
Mhm.
those kinds of colors. And they taste just like a regular mint. I mean, not like a regular mint, but like a fruity mint kind of a thing. But you can kind of feel good about taking them because it also has little vitamins in there too. So
How many can you take per day? Like you can't just
it
eat.
doesn't say well, it says a serving size is 4 pieces. And then that tells you like how much vitamin C, vitamin B6, vitamin B12 is in there. But it doesn't say anywhere on here, do not consume more than blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Okay. So you can feel good
So,
about
but if
eating.
you take these, it'll help convert food to energy, help support your immune system, and help support your nervous system.
Oh, I will try those.
Yeah, the flavors are berry,
Mentos.
strawberry, and orange.
I love Mentos gum because it's kind of like candy and gum.
Yeah.
All right. Mine is something called freshcutpaper.com. They are flower arrangements that are not flowers. And I found out I'd seen this a while back, but I actually used them because Alice could not have fresh flowers in her hospital room.
Mhm.
And I don't know all the reasons why, but apparently there's quite a few people in the hospital that cannot have fresh flowers or plants. But this
My
fresh cut
brother-in-law
paper,
was one of them because Christy was wanting to send flowers to Brent and found out he couldn't have fresh flowers in the
yeah,
room. Hmm.
I'm guessing there's some kind of bacteria or something that
Right.
I don't know. But anyway,
I never would have thought of that, but
yeah, it's so
that would have been
surprising.
a thing. Yeah.
So this fresh cut flowers, it's a card, and it comes, depending on what size you pick, it comes in an envelope. And when you pull it out, you can manipulate it, like squeeze it together so that it all pops out and it's 3D and it looks like a flower arrangement, and they're beautiful. And you can get little small, less expensive ones that are, I want to say, less than $15, but you can spend a little more and get a nice big one. And I mean, it really is a striking, cheerful flower arrangement. And even better, it doesn't die. You've got
Mhm.
it. It's something that you can keep and display and just cheerful. I thought
Nice.
it's a really neat thing. So freshcutpaper.com. Okay.
Very fun. Hmm.
Well, it's been a good discussion. As always, enjoy talking to you, and
Me too.
thankful for the fact that we can depend on, I mean, not just you and I depend on each other, but this community that we have and the church that God has given us. And that's really why I know a huge reason why God gave us the church is so that we can all be on the same team together and stand together against the devil. And that's what I hope that we will take out of this episode. That's my
Mhm.
intent. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Very
Well,
good. And I look forward to seeing you very soon.
yeah, today, just in about a week.
Hmm.
I can't remember what day it is, but next week.
Hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I love you lots. And until next time,
Keep looking up.
right.
Love you, friends.
Okay, see you later.
All right. Bye.